So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's varying different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me of that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again is nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. I am delighted today to welcome Yuquan Holloway. She's a dedicated leader with a career built on fostering a culture of consistency and efficiency in business operations. Her work focuses on creating standardized processes, streamlining core applications, and reducing critical incidents, and enhancing the IT service management. She earned her bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and later pursued her MBA at Georgia State University. As a Lean Six Sigma trainer and coach, she excels in addressing processes and performance challenges, delivering tailored solutions that drive measurable success. She's deeply committed to education beyond her professional achievements in business and IT, and this has led her to serve as part-time instructor, got to put my teeth in, at Kennesaw State University, where she taught information systems management to students at the Coles Business College. She's a resident of Atlanta and enjoys life with her husband Tavares and their children Harrison and Kendall and their cockapoo Loki. I'm assuming that's Loki. Yeah, which I'm assuming they are mischievous if they're called Loki. With a passion for solving problem solving and process improvement, she and her team are eager to support organizations in achieving their goals. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am likewise delighted.
It's really interesting. To tell people a little bit more about you, we've got a little bit of a glimpse about you and your life there. Tell us a little bit more about you, how you get into what you do. Oh, I forgot to mention you were a PhD as well, didn't I? So there we go.
Yeah, and just quick tidbit about Loki. He's the most patient, peaceful dog ever. I didn't know about Loki, the character, in the Norse god. I named him Loki for low key. Yeah. And everybody thinks he's mischievous, but he's a sweetheart.
Oh, right. That's interesting to know. Assumptions, right. Hey?
Assumptions, yeah. So I got into project management over 20 years ago. It was a good job. I was excited about it, but I wasn't necessarily born organized. And I struggled at it for a minute and trying to keep everything together and not being all over the place. And I really found salvation inside of the structure and the organization that people like PMI put out. And so knowing the rules and the templates and the approaches really helped me to then have some creativity inside of the lines. And once I learned a little bit about Lean Six Sigma, it gave me even more flavor and color to add into project management. So I enjoy it mostly because of it allows me another way to relate and connect with people. And I just truly have enjoyed it over the past, I guess, 24, 25 years. It's been a while. I've been doing this longer than I thought I ever would.
I think we all feel that way in project management. It's, there's a lot of people who've been in and around project management that kind of go, well, someone asked me to look after this, and then 20 years later, that accidental project manager. Changing now, obviously, because I think there's the work that PMI do and like APM in the UK and different project management organizations connecting with universities and teaching project management as a capability now. I think it's changed the dynamic of who's coming into the industry as well. I know there are people I've worked with who are 22, 23, and they come into the organization to be a project manager. They didn't come in not knowing what they wanted to do. They're coming in to do that sort of thing. So it changed certainly from when I started back in the day.
Definitely.
So just think about that. So what sort of industries have you been working in over the years in your project management career? Give us a little taster of how you got into it. What was your first project that you remember?
Yeah, my very first project was at my very first job. It was an industrial supply catalog company.
Right.
Really amazing company. And we were moving away from the green screens to what we called at the time the GUI.
Yeah.
A graphical user interface.
I remember that.
And I was to take the data entry team that kept all the customer information away from green screens and teach them about how to input data into a GUI. And so that was my project, learning that it had a beginning and an end, but I didn't have an organized approach to it until I went to Coca-Cola, where my very first project was to change our time and attendance system from a homegrown system to a huge company today, to another company, from our system to their system. And that was a huge first project to have. I had no clue how important that was as a person in my 20s, realizing that the people in the syrup plants lived and died by their time being right. Like they were paid based on what the clock said they'd done. And so I was hypersensitive about messing it up. I think somebody gave me a copy of the PM Bach, and I had it on one side and I had a notebook on the other side, and I was literally taking notes of what to do every day. This was back when it was Ask Jeeves, not Google.
Do you remember using that? That is some time ago, isn't it?
Yeah, I thank God every day for Jeeves. I asked him so many questions. I'm sure it wasn't nearly as good as the things we have access to today, but it was a great start. And so that was the first really big project. And so to your question, I started off with an industrial supply company. I did a stint in customer support for a large warehouse software company. And then I spent about 18 years in the beverage supply chain world. So I'd spent the majority of my
That's an interesting
childhood and growing up at a large beverage provider. And then I moved from there to working with all kinds of companies, healthcare, building supply, food, and most recently government, city and county. So I think these skills are portable all over the place.
Yeah. And it's interesting when I've been lucky to work across a few different industries in the IT side of it. And the industries that it is quite portable across there, but there are those nuances that can catch you out, even in different departments. I've been in places I'm sitting there and I'm like,
You do.
I didn't know that, but everyone assumed I did.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love so much with one of the tools that I learned in getting my probably green belt or yellow belt or one of the belts, the SIPOC, which is a mnemonic for suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers. Every time I walk into an organization, I'm asking, who's the customer of this service? What are the specific outputs they're looking for? What processes drive that output? What inputs drive that process? And who supplies those inputs? And I immediately get a vision for who the stakeholders are in that space. And I show it to one or two people, and they tell me all of my gaps. And it helps me to quickly get up to speed in a new space. I started that when I first left being at Coca-Cola, and it has served me so well. And I was like, wow, this has been a most beneficial tool to get
Yeah,
clear
that's it.
on the nuances.
Yeah, because that's interesting. Because it is as I alluded to there, when you move from even within a department from one project to another project, the nuances of that life cycle, that chain that you talk about there. I've always found it quite. It takes time to dig underneath and get there, and that's a really interesting way of speeding that up. Because otherwise, it's just when you learn by messing up basically,
Yes,
and you've got a maybe you get an onboarding pack if you're lucky. 50% of the links won't actually be there when you click on it. Some of them will be wrong anyway. We don't do that here anymore, etc. All that
that's
sort of
right.
stuff because they never kept up to date, are they? And then it's interesting because I'm always trying to think of how can I be effective because I'm there. I walk into a project and I'm thinking I'm an idiot here. I don't know what I'm doing.
That's
I
right.
haven't got a clue what's going on. And 6 months later, there's things that I've forgotten that I now know
That's right.
that I'm doing, and it's how you get to that. Was that thing where you're known incompetence model, isn't there? There's
Oh,
a conscious incompetence, unconscious incompetence, all those sort of things. And you're
absolutely. Look
a
at
lot
that.
of time in a project, you're in that unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know, so
Yeah.
you really struggle.
I found if I come at it that way, I actually perform better when I'm more new. And after I've been there for a while and I think I know more and I
Yeah,
stop taking that approach, that's when I start to miss things or miss people. And you definitely feel it when you get ready to roll something out or deploy. You're like, oh, I missed Joanne. She was very important. I had no clue Joanne was important. I didn't even know who Joanne was until today.
yeah,
And now we can't go live.
yeah. And I've had things trip up where the 2 days before we're going live, someone says, "But we can't do it on the same day. We've got to do it earlier," and it's like, what? Oh, but you've got to go and get paperwork and approval and run around and do that. And it's like, okay, and then that's the project manager with his hair on fire or her hair on fire running around, and you'll have done this, I'm sure, carrying a PC from one building to another because the person
Yeah.
who's meant to carry the PC from one building to another, we haven't got the right requisition order for them to do that. So you're doing it, and everyone's going, you're not meant to do that. Health and safety, you're not trained in lifting PC. Maybe less so now, but back in the day, I remember doing that sort of thing because you didn't know that you needed that extra piece of paper or that extra bit of approval to get someone allocated to your project, or as you say, just that rubber stamp from someone.
Yeah,
And
you don't know what you don't know when you first in a new industry, in a new company, in a new department with a new team. You don't know the things you don't know.
yeah, and it's as a PM, it's that I was reading something the other day, and it was about that um, ability to learn. In fact, it's written on my wall. I think it's Shoshin, which is like a Japanese word, which is a was because I saw something where someone had put a whole bunch of
Yeah,
I don't know if it's happiness or productivity stuff, but anyway, you got Ikigai and all those and Kaizen and all that. But Shoshin, which was one always be learning, always
always
be
be.
trying to do something. And as a PM, sometimes you can, as you said before, you can be there a little while and you get that little bit of arrogance because you think you know it and you forget that always learning, always inquisitive, always asking that question because and the assumptions, as they say, can make an ass of you and me. And it does, as a PM, we do know that. We sit there before now and you've gone, I didn't write that assumption down so that everyone else
That's
knew that I
right.
was assuming it. And it was wrong. And if I'd written it down, someone would have gone, well, that's wrong. But
Yeah, if you would have shared it. Back then I was walking around with a piece of paper showing it to people. Now I'm calling people and sharing my screen saying, "Hey, here's what I think this looks like."
yeah,
One, they're impressed. They're like, "Wow, I've never seen it like this. You really know our business." Oh no, I've just asked a lot of questions. And then two, it's like, oh yeah, but you need to also include treasury because they care about this process because and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that. And it
yeah.
also kind of tells me who to get voice of customer from.
It, yeah, identifying who's going to use it, who's going to be screaming if it's not working,
That's
who's
right.
going to
It's
be
usually not the person
delighted
that
if it
asked you to
is.
do
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
It's never your
Yeah.
boss. But
No, it's never, is it? Because
yeah.
that's interesting. Because it immediately made me think about, and I've had uh, people on the show talking about Lego and the way they use Lego Serious Play, and
Mm,
and just what you talked about there. It was SIPOC, wasn't it? That was the acronym.
that's it.
SIPOC. Yeah.
That's it.
I know that what they've done before now is when they've been trying to work out, say, a process or even in a factory type scenario as well, potentially, where you take a bunch of Lego and you build that process in Lego, and you build it in Lego, and then you walk through that process, and people go, "Well, no, that doesn't happen there. It has to go over to June and come back." And that exactly what you're talking about there is that other visualization of that process of that delivery or that custom that you've got there. Makes me think the joining those two together would be a really interesting way of doing it and being able to visualize it for people, because quite often it's difficult. You've got a Visio diagram, and the first problem you have with a Visio diagram is, oh, I haven't got a license for the Visio diagram, therefore I can't do that. So, let me get power. I'll do it in PowerPoint while I'm waiting there. Oh, this doesn't quite work. That you end up with all these things, and I'm sure there's lots of people sitting there, listening to this, nodding their head, going, "Yeah, Visio's never on your machine when you need it."
That's right.
And then that one day you do need it, the license expired, it's been uninstalled off your machine, and then you kind of got to go through that loop of 50 people to get it approved and get it on there again. So it's interesting, that kind of ways of using those different. As you say there, sometimes you do it in a room, even on a whiteboard and drawing it through, and your post-its and that sort of thing. There's real good visualization tools of that, and I think you have to do that for people to go. Because you could write a process in a Word document and explain the process, and it's easy to miss stuff in that. I think
It's
really
very easy to
difficult
miss it in
to
words.
understand it. Yeah,
Very
because you
easy.
misunderstand them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing when we spoke and we talked about what we were going to talk about today was about how how you have integrated Lean Six Sigma into project management, and that's all. I've not done any of the Six Sigma training. I have a bit of a vague idea on Lean.
Yeah.
I respect most of the people out there probably know loads more than me. But just you and me. Do you want to just give a quick 5-minute potted view of what Six Sigma is and Lean Six Sigma is for someone who hasn't heard about it?
Sure. So I'm usually talking about Lean Six Sigma, which is a amalgamation. I won't try that word, of two different things. Lean is all about removing the waste from a process, with the mindset that anything that the customer doesn't want is considered waste. So things like waiting, extra motion, inventory, all the things the customer doesn't want to pay for. Like I'll look at the internet forever to try to get out of paying for transportation. I just don't want to pay for a good to go from one place to the next, even though it makes sense. Stuff the customer doesn't want. And then Six Sigma is all about removing the variability in a process so that it's repeatable. Every time I go to a McDonald's and I get a cheeseburger Happy Meal, I've gotten one in almost every country that I visited for whatever reason, except India. It's the same thing. It's a repeatable, standardized process. So Lean and Six Sigma is about removing the waste and making sure that the customer gets a regular experience. And I took the courses, and I've taught the courses, and I really just like to pick and choose some of the things from a Lean Six Sigma methodology of DMAIC and put those things into my project. And here's why. Lean Six Sigma, I was going somewhere and I totally lost when I say here's why.
We all do
as far
that.
as DMAIC is a methodology, and Lean Six Sigma is all about solving problems. That's where I was going. It's more about solving problems. And I used to have a boss that would call a project a Nike project, or just do it. You know exactly what you need to do and why you need to do it and when you need to do it by. Install Workday at this place by this day. Whereas a Lean Six Sigma effort is understand why our associates are not making the required number of phone calls every day and solve that problem. So those are the one's problem solving and one's a project where you need to do something. Often in a project, we run into problems. And that's where I say, oh, let me pull something from here. But I do like the focus in Lean Six Sigma on getting very clear on who your customer is and what their expectations are. Because most of the time, the person that asks us to do the work is not the real customer. Maybe it's a sponsor, maybe it's somebody in the company with purse strings and somebody told them to tell you to do this, but they're often not the people that are going to receive your work. And so we'll go, I can't tell you how many times I put my heart into a project, 50, 60-hour weeks, and then I delivered it, and the people I was delivering it to was like, I don't want this. And so I'm very intentional about making sure that I know who the customer is and I know what their expectations are. Because your project is truly only successful if your customer's expectations are met, and you'll never meet their expectations if you never talk to them. So from Lean and Six Sigma, I really got grounded on getting clear on who my stakeholders are, using that SIPOC that I was talking about, as well as figuring out who my stakeholders are and getting the voice of the customer, the voice of the supplier, the voice of the process, really knowing what success looks like, what their expectations are, what keeps them up late, just, really being clear. So that's how I got really started in thinking of taking things I learned in problem solving and apply it to project management.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that there with the thing that draws all the way through that is that stakeholder and understanding your stakeholder. So that they're different needs, and quite often we do focus on the sponsor, the client,
Yeah.
the person gathering your requirements from, or whatever, or your own boss or whatever. Excuse me. And that person who's going to be sat at their desk or sat at their workstation or in a retail shop or something like that, who is having to deal with this thing that no one talked to them about, that's been done to them, that isn't giving them what they need or is making it hard. And I've been that person as well.
Yeah.
In systems and processes that are put in. I've been effing and blinding. Well, more than once, kind of my default response to a lot of things. But it those sort of things that where you've got to grab, and as PMs, it's really hard because basically everyone's banging on the desk. Get on with it. It's easy. We know it's just a project, implement it. And you kind of, well, is it the right thing? Are we doing the right thing for the right people? But then it's kind of, that's not your pay grade. We're telling you to do it. And then you've kind of, how do you do that? And I've got my change ninja books here around where your influence can be and how you get that, the right thing being done in spite of the organization wanting you to do something different.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult for us to step out as PMs from that. There's the time cost quality triangle. Deliver that. That's what you've got to deliver. Whereas actually, you should be sitting there going, if we're managing change properly, say, well, we shouldn't do this project. It's not going to help you. I know you want it because you want it for that, but these people means that your organisation is going to be worse off overall if you do this. And it's a hard thing to stand up and say.
Yeah, a lot of projects should die at the charter. I mean, the fact that more projects don't die at the charter stage means we're probably not doing it right. And I like to, if I have a consistent process of talking to the stakeholders and getting voice of customer, and I can take that back clearly to the sponsor, and that's just a repeated thing I do, then they listen a bit more. And getting clear on the stakeholders using that SIPOC and voice of customer is a great lead into my communications plan. And who's going to be a problem stakeholder and how I need to hold them a lot closer. And heck, do I even need to make sure they have a representative on the project team? Because these guys are unwieldy. So I need to just bring them in really close. So that's how that's my main thing that I do, probably, that I got from there.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's something I know that I can always do better I think, is that
Everybody.
step back, look at that end to end on that and the whole, because you're just focusing on the one that's the one stakeholder that's making the noise, and that will typically be the person with the purse strings,
That's right.
and that's the one that you hear more often from, and that's where you kind of got to go. Actually, where's my checklist? Go as you say, go through the PM box and be able to say, these are the steps I need to go through. My checklist, as we talked about before,
Yeah.
my checklist for this call, I need to make sure that you don't have to dive off to the lavatory halfway through. It's a key thing on my there, as we talked about before. And it's kind of one of those checks that I have to do. And if I don't do that, that means the experience we get on here and the experience of my customers who are listening to this aren't going to get an attentive, engaged person because they're distracted by something else, and it's a very small microcosm of it, but it's that same. If you just blow that up to your project and go, well, if I do the same sort of thing, and I've actually got a book here somewhere where I've started with what I've called my playbook, where creating my own from you've got you can pick a PM book or something like that, but there's certain things that you do in the way that you like to do them on your projects, or that you found work, little tricks. And it triggered me from doing some training on finances for some of our juniors that were coming in about doing that finance review process within our organization. And I need to write this down for me, because some of this stuff that I've remembered again as I've gone through it, I just do it without thinking. And sometimes I don't, because I'll miss it and I'll forget. Oh, check the average charge rate on that. That's another thing to decide whether something looks weird. And creating that playbook, I heard it on another podcast about doing that and having these playbooks. So, right, when I'm doing a finances, when I'm doing one of these unique scenarios, when I've got stakeholders to go into do this SIPOC, and kind of having that bigger checklist of your own of things that you know have worked. But it's just, again, I've got to, it's one of my projects that's sitting there. It's in under a pile of papers, as everyone can see on the video, my usual pile of stuff there. It's in there somewhere, and it started, and it's got a nice drawing of finance written on it, but I haven't got any further. But I need to work out how to do that.
Yeah.
Coming back to the lean side of things, I'm going to be a miserable old git here on this, because I've seen lean done, and I'd like to hear from you how you stop people doing this. I've seen it where someone's gone, right, we're going to make this department lean, and their method for making this department lean ended up being, well, we won't do it, we'll get them to do it. And whenever someone drops something out of an organization or out of a process in a project-oriented organization, there's one person who picks up that, and it's the PM. And I would kind of sitting there going, well, that's not, for me, that's not lean. And everyone thinks, well, we've got a lean, this department's lean now. And I'm like, you are, but the organization isn't, because now you've just piled it onto us. So your wait time where you're having to do something and you're a bit quicker and easier. And I just thought, I assume that's lean done wrong. But then where's your thoughts on that? I can see the benefits of identifying wasteful processes and things that isn't the right things for those people to do. But then, if there's an organizational thing you need to build into it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, when you tell people you're doing a lean implementation, people get nervous. Does this mean you're leaning me out, or are you taking work away? But truly, it's about making sure that the process gives the customer exactly what the customer needs and no more. And so whatever process you're looking at, you're looking to see who is the customer of this process. It's not necessarily something you're doing to the employees that are providing that service, but what are the steps, and are any of those steps non-value add? Now, if somebody has to do something, then they have to do something. So just shifting it and moving that pile of work around to different people inside the organization, maybe it makes my day a little bit better, but it doesn't, overall, the customer doesn't feel the impact if I just shifted it. And it sounds like if they shifted it to you and it's something you do ad hoc, it's probably going to negatively impact the customer and be less timely or have less
Yeah.
quality. And it's all about making sure that you know what the customer's requirements are and you are providing that customer exactly what they need, exactly when they need it. So,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
interesting.
people have different definitions what they're
Yeah,
doing.
and that's where I kind of sat there and went, well, the area, as you say, that area's now more efficient, now more effective, and they're able to do more stuff with the same amount of people. But as you say, the actual and they're delivering at what they need to do and what they committed to do, and they've got this. But the end output, the three steps beyond to that customer. And to me, it always kind of sits across that if you're going to do something lean, you've got to pick processes to make lean, not
That's right.
areas. Now, you've probably got both. There is a dynamic across both because obviously you can't just fix this because there's other bit. But that whole thing, as you say, that end customer insight, if you start here and end there, and I've seen it innumerable times that it just doesn't go that process. It goes to here and it doesn't see that thing. Or it does, oh, this bit is the bit we can see, but there's this here and this here that's added on, but it's outside of our remit, therefore it's okay. And it does make me grumpy. And I do express my grumpiness at times on that. But
I can
it's
see
kind of how
that.
do you do that? So thinking about that, and I'm thinking about with projects being so insular in their nature in some ways, because the drive for us is deliver that project. With that, our commitment is deliver that. There is the outcomes that we're going to deliver to our customer, but there is very much the drivers. Most PMs, we're there with that time cost quality triangle that is changing. I know there's redefinitions of going, right, we need to add value in there. And I know
Uh-oh.
PMI's recent study of, right, okay, so what's the value and what the real measure of success is. That's a hole we can dig and go down for many days. But from your perspective, how do you, when you're teaching or when you're consulting with people, how do you help PMs apply this customer view, this lean view in their projects? What are the kind of steps do you what are the questions you ask?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in the initiate phase, I'm very um, insistent, at least for myself, very insistent on understanding the stakeholders in that initiate phase so that I'm very clear on what does success look like for the various stakeholders of this project. Because it's hard to plan for it if you don't ever know about it or if you don't hear about it until the very end. So that's
Yeah,
huge. And then also just how you work with your project team and bring them along and who that project team is. So are there some stakeholders that should have a seat at the table as far as the project team? Sometimes I'm given a project team and after I do my stakeholder analysis, I'm like, hey, we really would do better with having a little bit of representation from this person. Or can they be a sponsor or something? We need to hold them in a little bit closer so that they have some, what do they call it in Agile? Some skin in the game.
yeah,
The chicken and the
yeah. I
pig.
can see because that brings if it becomes they're part of the solution and part of what's happening rather than it being delivered to them. So immediately
Definitely.
I have a different phrase, but I won't use that because it's quite different language, fruity
Oh,
language.
I really want to hear it.
I won't, not for this one. It's about tense and different things. Anyway,
Okay.
um, it's on the inside, not the outside. So it's kind of if they're inside trying to help us, that's the important thing, isn't it? Is getting those
Yeah.
people feel ownership of what they're doing, they feel part of what's happening, and then and understand the challenges there. Because if they are intimate with the team, they'll understand how difficult it is and be part of that team, and they'll be solutioning it as well. Then, won't they?
It's way bigger than than we would think it is, but having the right people engaged, even if there are people that you can't bring along for the ride, but they need to be along for the ride, finding
Yeah,
ways to do that, whether it's I'm going to meet with this leader one on one every week because I need him to be close, or I'm going to make sure this particular leader that she gets all of our meeting minutes and she sees the actions so that she can stay connected. But getting clear on stakeholder, I think, is very underestimated. And it's often,
yeah,
I call it getting sideswiped You're almost on the final leg of the race, and then you just get knocked out of the water by some stakeholder who was just holding things to themselves for months. You're like, dude, why are you just now saying this?
Yeah, and there's varying reasons for that, isn't it? There'll be reasons there where sometimes it will be, well, I assumed you got it, and innocently they think, well, I assumed you had that handled. Some will be, oh, I've got power here. If I don't say something, that makes me.
I get them on the record so early. I'm like, you are not going to skate for 6 months and do this.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling? What's going on? Thank you. I've documented it. And they're like, okay, well, let me bring this up.
Yeah.
And then the other lean, this might be more Six Sigma tool that I really love, is the FMEA, failure modes and effect analysis. And it's about understanding all the ways that something can go wrong. And I had a woman that worked for me years ago, and she would deliver the best projects. And I was like, why are you so good? And she said, I just manage to the risk. I think about all my risk, and I create a plan that addresses my risk. And I was like, huh. And as I've turned that around in my head for years now, I'm like, she's right. I mean, we all have a plan. And then life happened. Or what does Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face.
Yeah.
But so in failure modes and effect analysis, you're looking at all the ways something can fail, and you're evaluating it based on the severity of it, if it were to happen, the likeliness that that failure is going to occur, and how detectable it is. How would you even know that that was about to happen? So for a quick example, probably 15, I don't know how many years ago, we had the horrible bombing at the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
And then the next year I was in a class, an agile class. I was like, I need to learn more about this. And there was a woman from the city of Atlanta, the government, in the class. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And she said, well, we did an FMEA on our big road race that's coming up. In Atlanta on the 4th of July, we have this Peachtree Road Race. People use it as a qualifier for major races. And she said, we realized that we don't have a great way to detect if something were to happen. If a bomb happens is severe, the likelihood that it could happen is fairly high because it just did in another major city, but our detectability is very low. And so they decided they needed to include some detection devices along the parade route, and that became her project. And so for all projects, one of the first things I ask at the kickoff meeting is, what are all the ways this project can go wrong? People love to answer that question. They may have been silent for months until you ask them, hey, how could this fail? And they tell you.
I've heard another way that people have done that is actually even stronger from that point of view. Right, let's imagine we're at the end of the project, or imagine we want this project to fail. How could we stop it? And
that's
do you know what I mean? If you're it wasn't me, it was someone else who said it, and it was kind of like, that's a really good, because it's a game in some ways there, isn't it? Because you will bring it, and you'll bring in the things that you don't think about and go.
And that might allow people more freedom to PC. Yeah, that might allow people to be more freely share the way you just said it. So what I sometimes have to do in organizations where the leadership, nobody wants to say anything in front of them, I'll do an anonymous survey and they'll tell me. But then I score each of those things using severity, occurrence, and detectability. And we're quickly able to see which risks are the most painful risks. And we can build a plan that addresses those risks.
Taking notes here of everything you're saying.
It's one of my favorite things now. So right before the pandemic, I had a project that kicked off in January 2020. And I'm an eternal optimist. I never think anything bad is going to happen. I know. And I live in 2024 now. So I was like, hey guys, what are all the ways this, what are the things that might happen to go wrong? And somebody said, well, there's this kind of illness that's going around. I was like, oh yeah, that's not that serious. It's hyped up by the media. But I said, I'll add it here. The severity of it would be high. The likeliness of it is fairly low. And the detectability, I don't know, maybe the news media would tell us. So it scored low the first week of the project. Well, at the end of the next meeting, I was like, hey guys, let's admire our risks again and rescore them. It inched up. And I was like, By the third week, we're on the full, we're like, oh, this is a problem. So we came up with a mitigation plan for if we had to work from home because of this phantom illness. And sure enough, when they did tell us to go home, we already had a detailed plan on how we would work if a pandemic happened because it kept changing. And I was like, yeah, this is a tool that can work because we were ready, still did our work, we finished, and everybody's like, how did you guys know like that this was something you needed to address? Well, the severity of it was always high, but the likeliness that it would occur started inching up, and it made it a more risky thing for us to deal with.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think did you just use the phrase there? You admire each week. You admire your risks.
I love calling it. Let's admire
That's
our
a great
risks.
phrase. That's a great phrase.
I love reality TV. That's like watching train wrecks, and I call it admiring.
Because it's a really good way of looking at it, though, isn't it? It's kind of we're going to look at these and we're going to and review them. And I imagine it's maybe it's just me, but that process of going through and reviewing those risks, sometimes it's just geez. Yes, we know nothing's happening on that. We know that. You mean because actually the lower level risks you're doing stuff about, aren't you? You've built it into your plan. You do it, but and you keep them going, and then you've got the ones that you have to document for others in some ways. But it's a case of how you balance that real operational risk to what you're delivering, and the ones that are kind of backside covering risks, which I'd say there's a lot of that around with the risk management is about risk reporting, not risk management. And I think that's something that we fall into. And I think the other thing I just heard from you there was where you're saying about where you might have a room of people where you're trying to identify these risks and you've got a senior member in there. I think that rather than sitting there going, right, what might happen? Well, he might not give us the funding. You can't say that.
Yeah.
But if you're playing the game of right, let's try and stop it, you can say, well, John, you don't give us the money, and that's a different dynamic, isn't it? Straight away, you're playing the game. You're thinking of daft ideas in a brainstorming kind of way, but it diffuses that because you're not saying he's a pain in the backside. He never gives us the money. It's kind of, if he wanted to, he could stop. And that does change and would potentially allow people to open up in those scenarios a lot more, I think. Because I think of lessons learned sessions, you get that difficulty.
Yeah, if I put the anonymous survey results on the screen, people start to opt in because they'll see other people shake their heads and they're like, oh, you said that? Well, let me tell you something else.
Safe.
But that's a good idea. I like that idea you shared.
It's that safe space, isn't it? And feeling safe to say it. And as you say, that person who sat at the back there, well, I didn't like to say on day one, but, and it's day 12 or month 12 of the delivery, and that's when you really could have done with them telling you early on. Yeah. I didn't think it would. I would thought I was just being pessimistic. And they've got you or me sat at the front, geeing them up and trying to create a team thing, and we've got this great thing we're going to deliver, and we're going to be great, and we're going to look brilliant, and being optimistic about when we'll deliver it.
That's right.
I think optimism as a project manager is something that is, I think, underneath everyone. That is something there that we and it's a danger for us all.
It is. I have to temper it. I have to temper it with reality, and that. Admiring the risk is my way of tempering it because I'll just act as if everything's going to magically happen on a certain day because I wish it to be so.
Yeah. Well, you're drawing a Gantt chart, so surely it's going to happen. Surely everyone knows the Gantt charts deliver what they say and on the same day, and there's nothing ever missing from them.
That's right. Those Gantt charts are magical.
Yeah, they're brilliant. Just thinking that. So if you were coaching a PM or something like that, or going into an organisation trying to help them get themselves to kind of help them improve their processes and use these kind of tools, what, like, from a project delivery point of view, how would you say, what one thing, I know we've got this list of items there, what would you say to a PM who's either new, experienced, whatever, say, right, if you do this, this is going to help you implement this, or, you know, what I mean, have these kind of flows through. What I think I know where it might go, and it might be
Oh
something we said
man,
before.
it's funny because I wouldn't have believed I would have said this a year or so ago, but I'd say clarity of communication. If you communicate clearly, it's going to change your world. My grandmother would call it tell the truth and shame the devil. But if you are very clear with your communication, now I'd say a charter is communication and being very clear about what it says and working with it to make sure that what's in there is the truth and the scope is realistic, and then the same with getting the voice of the customer. That's communication, the voice of the people that are on the project, asking them what are all the ways that this can fail. The plan is yet another form of clear communication, a realistic plan. Now you've created a realistic plan and somebody told you, nope, you got to do it quicker than that, right? And
Oh, yeah.
then you try to talk to them about the triangle and the scope and the timing and the quality, and they say, yeah, I
And
hear you.
then you say you've got contingency in there, and they go, well, take all that out because everything will be fine.
But I mean,
Can we work
keeping that
weekends?
communication clear. Yeah, I hear you saying this. Here's what this does to the scope or the schedule. And then back to being very clear on the risk and communicating it well and using that team meeting or that status to be yet another form of clarity. This is where we are. This is where we're going. This is where we're struggling. This is the help we need. Here are our recommendations. I'm starting to feel like of all the tools in the world, the two most important are good relationships and clear communication. Clarity, I think somebody said that Dave Ramsey says this, and I can't say that he does because I don't really listen to his show. But clarity is kindness, or kindness is clarity, one of the two. And I think about that often when we give people, I'm a people pleaser. When we give people the view that they want, we're not being kind. Even if it makes us look good in that moment, we're doing ourselves and them a disservice. And so I've become a person that would say it's all about clarity, and the tools and the templates and all of that is just only should be used if it's helping to provide clarity and direction.
Yeah, I think that it's the whole thing. I think there's there was something we talked about a while back around. There was a post on LinkedIn, I think it was, and they were talking about it, projects about people. It's about delivering people, and the point my comment on was, well, yeah, it is, because projects are all about communication. 90% of the processes, the PM block, when you look through it, from my view, 90% of it is about communicating. It's about a different stream, but it's
Yeah.
about communication and how you communicate those things, how you
Yeah.
get them done by communication. A spreadsheet
Mm,
with your finances, a profit and loss account is a communication tool.
it is.
It's not a finance tool. It's a communication tool to say how well you're doing. They're all communication tools. And so if it's all
Oh
about
man,
communication, it's all about people. It's the point, isn't it? It's all about people. And
that's
therefore the relationships and the kindness is critical.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
kind of, I can see where that all comes from. Now, I'm just looking at the clock and I'm seeing that we are coming up on time. We've nearly been talking for nearly an hour,
What?
which we're coming up on that 50-minute sort of slot in there. It's easy, and I'm sure we can go down about 10 other rabbit holes at this point. But was there something, obviously coming on the show, there's things that you'd like to share, and you probably had something in the back of your mind. Was there anything that we haven't covered so far that you would think, I really wanted to make that point to help those people out there do better and be better at what they're doing and be better project managers?
Yeah, I've been shocked recently at I guess a Generation Xer, and I feel like when I started in the corporate America that we got a lot of training on different things. We had training departments in companies that were fully staffed of people that trained on whatever it is we were to do. And I'm finding that people don't necessarily get that anymore. I don't know if we think they come into the workplace brilliant or if they have access to AI and Google and they should know some things that they might not know. But I have been pleasantly surprised at how beneficial it has been to actually put teams of people through training together. One, to make sure they're all using the same terminology and have the same understandings of the same thing, because sometimes they don't. And people with the title of senior project manager over the past year that we've trained that have never had any type of project management training. And they're a senior project manager in an organization responsible for multi-million dollar projects. I mean, and they're finding their way and they're doing the best they can. But them being shocked at things like the benefit of process mapping or doing a communication plan or just some things that I think would make their lives easy. Even we do a class on effective meetings. And I mean, that's the if people are the root of the project, the meeting is the love language. I mean, that's the only place you can even get stuff done anymore is at a meeting. You gotta have a meeting. And just the abuse of the meeting as a love language. So that's the biggest thing I've seen in the mission that we're on is training people and giving them training that fits in the culture that they live in. So if we were to come into an organization and train, the first thing we do is a survey. We'll give everybody that's going to be in the training a survey, monkey survey. But I asked my assistant to randomly pick 4 people out of the names, and I talk to them. And it's always a really good conversation to prepare me for the actual class because I learn a lot about their culture because, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I remember the first time I heard that, I was thinking, what is this guy talking about? I mean, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if it doesn't fit in your culture, it's grass. So we've really had a great year in learning about an organization and then giving them project management training or Lean Six Sigma training that fits in their space. Meaning it's not different. It's just we're using their examples. We're talking about the squirreling around that they have to do to make it work in their space. So I really think, especially with our newer generations in the workplace, Z, and I think, what's this new one, Alpha?
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we give them a grounding with training, and they want to learn. They really do. But I don't know that we've set them up for success. So that's one of the things we really push.
Yeah, it's really interesting that because it is that throw everyone on I'll use Prince 2 as an example in the UK. Throw everyone on a Prince 2 course, they all know how to do project management. Great. Then someone comes back trying to implement all of the processes on there. Or send them on your internal one that you've created that is just this balloon. And understanding what to use, and I'm a big one from my point of view, is the right level of governance on a project. Because you can kill a project by doing everything. And as part of a project manager, I see it as part of my role to get told off for not doing certain things that I don't think need to be done, but the organisation thinks maybe we should, and then I only do it when I get slapped on the wrist. Now, there's certain things that you don't just skip, but there are certain things where you just sit there and go, that's not for us. We don't need that. And like you said, the emphasis on things there, it's kind of, you train someone how to get loads of external supplier procurement training. And the projects they're on, they're all internal and they've got no external suppliers. So why give them the same level of that, whereas internal stakeholder management is something they've got to do because they've got to pull resources from the internal. That's where you want to focus training. So I can see where that approach really makes a difference. As I say, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I've got a list of things in Notepad that I'm going to do a bit more Googling on, or I might use Ask Jeeves to see if I can find it.
You know what? I'm going to write that down. I'm going to see if Ask Jeeves will answer me.
And so if people want to find out more, carry on the conversation with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Info@hollowaycg.com is a way. And I'm very active on LinkedIn under Yuquan Holloway. So my spelling, Yuquan, last name Holloway. I'm the one that's in America. I answer those and I meet people that way all the time. We have a website, hollowaycg.com, where we talk about these things and publish a newsletter and all that kind of stuff.
Brilliant. So, superb. So, Yuquan, thank you for coming on the show. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Yeah, thanks again.
I'll give you I'll give you a link to a project checklist that you can add with the show notes. And
I'll chuck that in there. Yeah, I'll stick all. I think I saw that on one of the freebies, so I will stick that in. That'll be brilliant.
That's it.
Yeah, superb. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
I hope it's not our last time talking. We can talk anytime about anything. It doesn't even have to be on the podcast.
Brilliant. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
In project management, we face a common problem. The plan differs from reality. It leads to undesirable consequences, such as failure to deliver a project on time, financial loss, loss of customer and management trust, and many others. Why does it happen? The reasons may be different, but the most common among them are mistakes during the planning phase, uncoordinated teamwork, lack of information on the project progress. In Gantt Pro, we have thought through all the details to minimize these risks, both at the planning and implementation phases. At the planning phase, you save your time. Gantt Pro is an intuitive tool. In 10 minutes, you and your team will manage projects skillfully. Create a detailed and visual plan that answers what and when questions at any stage of your project. Minimize the risks of overdue tasks. Cut expenses by assigning resources like budget, time, and labor cost. You'll take into account all the constraints in advance. Planning is our strength, but we also made Gantt Pro an ideal tool to use at the implementation phase. At the implementation phase, you invite your team in the already created project and start working without any delay and confusion. Spend less time on meetings and discussions. Avoid overdue tasks and expectations. Everyone receives notifications about the workflow and gets other means for organized teamwork. Evenly distribute workload and avoid employees over-allocation. Get information on possible risks in advance and remove them timely. Have at-hand information on the project progress. Keep track of its high-level status and even project portfolios. Also, Gantt Pro gives a possibility to share your project with customers and clients at any stage, both for pre-sale and demonstration of the current state. Export reports to popular formats, keep documentation and communication around tasks in real time. With Gantt Pro, you always know when a project ends, how many resources are needed, who is working on what, and identify risks of overdue tasks at early stages. Plan with Gantt Pro, professionally and easily.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.